I don't want either of you to think that my questions are in any way trying to blame people who tried really hard and who quite evidently feel very bad about the things that didn't get done or things that weren't executed perfectly. But it's our job to understand the efficacy of the things our government tried to do to protect the American people. Let me start, Mr. Black, with one follow-up question to you. Our staff statement talks about the CIA's zone defense as opposed to man-to-man, to use the current basketball analogy. After Al-Hazmi and Al-Midar were followed by you out of the Kuala Lumpur meeting, and you lost them in Bangkok, it's our understanding that you knew that Midhar had a U.S. visa. And so my question is, why at that point was he not put on the tip-off watch list?
Well, I would say that that particular case should have been. And unfortunately, ma'am, very often you'll find my answers going back to primarily influenced by not enough people and not enough resources. You've got these people racing around playing essentially professional racquetball and trying to keep up with all of these facts. In fact, I would say that there were multiple opportunities where we could have watch listed.
Yes, I just gave you one.
There was one, but I mean, it goes back to in the UAE when we first came up with copies of the passport and the picture. And I would just like to say that having spoken to some of the people involved with this, you know, they truly believe that this information was passed to the FBI way back in January of '01, and you know they thought they had done it, and they acted as if they did.
Quite apart from the FBI. I mean, I wanted to take the FBI.
Sure.
I purposely asked this question to take the FBI out of the equation.
Yeah.
What we saw, quite frankly, was a geographical focus. That once these operatives, got out of a particular geography, they disappeared, and back home here we didn't effectuate the handoff. And so I do want to move on, but it's my understanding that we had an opportunity then, and we had others, to put these two operatives whom we had identified on the tip-off watch list as early as 2000. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Now, Mr. Pickard, I want to return to the questions that my now absent colleague, Mr. Romer, was asking you about the communications with the field, and you indicated that in this period of high threat in July, you had, as part of your annual performance review, you talked with the SACs. Among other things, about terrorism, and you also indicated that you had a conference call on July 19th in which you discussed, again, a number of other things, but mentioned the terrorist threat. And so we are trying to understand what the nature of that conversation was and how it was received.
The July 19th?
Yes. Now, what I think the way you answered Commissioner Romer, I don't want to put words in your mouth, was that these guys, people who are receiving this information, have so much coming into them that really sifting what is important is difficult. And I want to drill down on the Minneapolis example, because you indicated that you called the SAC and you said, why didn't you pick up the phone and call me? What the people who were working on the Moussaoui case told us was that they were desperate to get the attention of headquarters. This is after your two conversations with the SACs. Right. Desperate. And they went to the SAC and they said, would you please call Mike Rollins, the International Terrorism Section Chief in headquarters? And the SAC wouldn't do it. So this is not an issue of sifting. This is an issue of disconnect, I think, between the headquarters and the field. And I would like you, if you can, to square up that behavior with the conversations you think you had with him.
Okay. On July 19th, I had all 56 SACs on the phone, and I discussed 4 topics. First off, I discussed with them back to basics. It was a program that I had instituted with the inspection division based upon the problems the FBI had with the Timothy McVeigh documents, to make sure that the employees of the FBI understood how pieces of evidence were to be handled, how they were to get in our files, and to make sure we did not have a recurrence of the Timothy McVeigh. The second thing I talked to them about was our new director, Director Robert Mueller. I told him that I had a conversation with him, that he was enthusiastic about the job. The employees of the FBI were looking for who is the new leader, who is going to take us into the 21st century. And there was quite a bit of excitement in the interim between Director Free and Director Mueller as to who's going to be our new boss. Everybody wants to know who they work for and things like that. So I talked to him about my conversation with Director Mueller and his enthusiasm for the job. The next topic I talked about was there was concern expressed by the SACs to me. They felt I should be getting out in front of the media, talking about the good things about the FBI and things like that. I told them I was not going to do that. I wanted them to get back to putting the I back in FBI for investigations, and that would increase our presence and increase our stature and things like that. And then finally, I told them about the threat level. I told them about that the chatter was still at a high level. I didn't have any further information about the chatter level, but I expected that at any time we could have a terrorist incident and they would be responding somewhere in the world, wherever it might be. They pulled the records yesterday. The conversation lasted approximately 35 minutes. I've given you a 2-minute synopsis of that. I can't recall with a lot more specificity what happened there. I don't understand why, but I think if I could talk to you, on the afternoon of September 11th, we had reports all over the map. We had situations where we thought the Department of State had been bombed. We thought bombs were going off. We thought the Sears Tower was evacuated and things like that. I called all 56 SACs again, first off to get an evaluation of where we stood, what was happening, where we needed resources deployed to, what we could do, and what we could also get back to the director so that if he had meetings with the president, and he had a number of conversations and meetings with the president that day, Director Mueller, I wanted to have the best information we had. I also asked them at this time, is there anything in our files, anybody who came into our offices, anything that in light of what happened this morning, September 11th, that we need to know about, that we need to capitalize on to see whether we can prevent any future plots. At that time, we were worried that, is Al-Qaeda going to do something else tomorrow? What is going to be the next thing we're going to get hit with? When I asked that, immediately I was told about the Minneapolis arrest of Moussaoui. That was about 3 o'clock on September 11th. Later that day, I found out about the Phoenix memo, and then a couple of days later, the agents in New York, when we started identifying the hijackers, they called in and said, we were looking for Midhar and al-Nawazi. We didn't realize that they were involved in a plot.
Mr. Chairman, can I have one follow-up question, please?
Very brief.
Very brief.
We're running a little late.
I'm sorry, but I was silent all morning.
Doesn't she get extra time?
When you found out that Director Tenet had been briefed in August about an Islamic extremist learning to fly, which was your case, and he knew about it in August, and you didn't until after September 11th. How did you feel about that, and how did you feel about the efficacy of the conversations you had with your subordinates in July?
I was very disappointed that something that would go up to the DCI that I wouldn't hear about. But that was because we had a joint terrorism task force in Minneapolis. The officer from the CIA who was working on that task force pushed that up through their chain. The FBI did not push it up.
Thank you.
I also had a conversation with Director Tennant, and he did not bring it up to me, though, either, on August 27th.
Thank you.